Welcome to In the Spotlight with Eric Townell. My guest today is Alexander Peña, Program Director and Lead Teacher for ROC Music Collaborative. Welcome, Alexander. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. You have a very exciting project in progress, and it's delightful that you could come in.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting us.
So tell us about ROC Music Collaborative and everything we should know.
Good. In a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah.
The ROC Music Collaborative is an El Sistema inspired program, and if you don't know what El Sistema means, it means the system, and it was basically a program and set of philosophies that came out of Venezuela. About 40 years ago, the government used a classical music education program nationwide that was free for all youth across the country, and the idea was that they were going to use classical music and utilize these music education programs to create a wealth of music lovers, but also students that would then develop the kind of skills that they need for career readiness, for life skills. And what it ended up doing after these 40 years was it grew into a program of over 300,000 students in Venezuela in classical music, which is amazing.
It's amazing.
But on top of that, they saw so much improvement in metrics like attendance to school, graduation rates, lowered teen pregnancy, all these different kinds of things that we would like to see as far as social programming. It was interesting to see that classical music affected these things. And the reason that we believe that that happened was because they created a network of orchestras and communities of music lovers. So they used choruses and orchestras and bands to basically develop a sense of identity within an individual, like a musician, or also a community, so that they had a group of peers that also were devoted to this. And we know that when you have a network of peers doing the same thing that you're doing, that usually you commit just as hard as everyone else does and you feel like you have something to bring to the team. So that's El Sistema in Venezuela, and how it basically came to the United States was, you might be familiar with TED Talks that are present online and that sort of thing.
But remind us what those are.
TED, I think it stands for Technology, Education, and I don't know the last, what D is for. But they're basically, it's an organization that presents kind of worldly ideas for any idea, basically, that is something that can affect the world at large, or a really interesting idea at making this world better. And you can check out TED Talks online. It's TED, and you can look it up on Netflix or on YouTube and that sort of thing. But out of that project came basically yearly a wish, and they would grant one person or one organization in the world one large wish. And similar to almost like a Pulitzer Prize or a Nobel Peace Prize, this one person that's doing a lot of great work gets this honor of being called the head prize winner or whatever. And the man who won it, his name is Abreu, Maestro Abreu, and he's a Venezuelan man who started El Sistema, which means the system, in Venezuela. And if you look at that interview, what he basically was granted was, I can't remember the exact amount, but it was several millions of dollars for any wish. And what he wished for was basically to take this El Sistema philosophy and program that's been working in Venezuela for the past 40 years, and he really believed passionately that if we can bring it to the United States, and if we can train a new group of leaders in this philosophy in the United States, that it would disseminate and essentially grow worldwide, because he really believed that if it could be done in the United States, it could be done anywhere in the world. So I think that's kind of an amazing thing to think about when you say you've won several millions of dollars for a prize, and you are the leader of this organization in Venezuela, and you could certainly add that money to your own program. But he didn't do that. He said that he believed in his mission so much that classical music could really change the lives of troubled youth that fall into this kind of impoverished category or at-risk group of people. And he really said, with that money, I'd like to see a program start in the United States so that it would grow around the world. And so it basically started off at the New England Conservatory in Boston, Massachusetts, and they trained several leaders that have now developed programs here in the United States. We say that we are El Sistema inspired programs. And the reason we say that is because it is not a pedagogy or a method or like a system of books that you buy into.
Suzuki or...
Right, exactly. It's not a franchise of any kind that you buy in as far as how to teach, but really El Sistema is only a set of ideals or a set of philosophies of how to go about teaching community-based projects with classical music to affect social change. So this was about, I would say, 13 years ago that it was brought to the United States. Since then, there have been leaders in this that have trained in El Sistema ideals and philosophies. And now there are over 70 programs nationwide that are El Sistema inspired programs.
70.
And you can check out more information on elsistemausa.org, and you can find all of these different programs across the nation. And so basically what happened was here in Rochester, we wanted to build an El Sistema program. And so my organization is called ROC Music, R-O-C Music, like the airport code without the K. And we are going into our 3rd year of programming currently right now. So that we've had 3 years of students, but a year prior to that, it was first the dean of the Eastman School of Music. His name is Jamil Rossi.
Yes.
And he approached 2 people. He started with, actually he approached 3 people, I'm sorry. He approached Peggy Quackenbush, who is the president and director of the Hochstein School of Music and Dance. He also approached Charlie Owens of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. Yes. And then he approached someone at the Rochester City School District that was in charge of arts programming at the district level.
Oh, yes.
And he basically started with the statement of, do you feel we're positively affecting and reaching our urban population in downtown Rochester with the arts and with music? And of course he went to a like school like Hochstein and Eastman and then RPO and then the district, and the overriding answer was no. The reality of it is we have these amazing programs in Rochester. There's a huge wealth of arts and musical opportunities in Rochester, but the realities of it is that the city is kind of a haves and have-nots situation. That there was this whole population of people that even with scholarships available, somehow weren't participating in music. They weren't getting to these schools like ECMS, Eastman Community Music School, or Hochstein, or different kinds of at-risk factors caused them to not be able to be a part. So with this, he said, well, let's try to see if we can come up with a new program, something different. And so these people met for a year, and then they designed ROC Music, the ROC Music Collaborative. At that point, our organization, and still is a partnership collaborative. So our partner collaborators are the Eastman School of Music, University of Rochester, as well as the Eastman Community Music School. And then we also have the Hochstein School of Music and Dance, the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, the Rochester City School District, and then one other partner, which is the City of Rochester and the Department of Recreation and Youth Services.
I think that's unique, that's such a collaboration of all of these different entities.
Absolutely. I think on a national level, we stand out as one of the few El Sistema programs that has been able to successfully partner with not just an amazing university and conservatory, but also 2 other community schools, as well as a professional orchestra. And you mix into that a school district and a municipal entity like the City of Rochester. It really is an amazing thing to have really these institutions that are movers and shakers and really the top of downtown Rochester kind of sitting around a table and saying, yes, we believe that we want to teach music and spread this around to a population that has been classically underdeserved, underrepresented, and underutilized. And I think that nationally it sticks out that we have everyone saying yes,
Isn't that
and believing in this. Absolutely. So now our program, we started off with a pilot program, like I said, 3 years ago. And we decided to target the City of Rochester recreation and community centers.
Oh, I see.
And the idea was that we believed that there was a need in the City of Rochester because the school district is a non-neighborhood school system. So there are many different kinds of schools, and families can go to school of choice depending. And so it causes this issue a little bit of a community of people not being attached to the building or the school that they go to based on where they live. And so one of the reasons we selected using the community centers was a way for us to utilize these rec centers that are all throughout downtown Rochester and basically develop a community of music lovers and orchestras and choruses so that we now have kids coming to these rec centers after school or on the weekends or during the summer. So not when school's in session, but to come to a music program, to develop a love for music, but to also develop a sense of respect and identity through being in a musical group at these recreation centers.
So you mentioned kids. What ages are these?
That's right. So we have kids grades 1 through 12 that are eligible to be in rock music. So we have a huge gamut of students in different levels. Right now, the way that rock music is structured is we meet 3 days a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 4 to 6 p.m. So this is after school.
Right.
And we have a summer program as well for 3 weeks during the summer. And we have 3 classes basically at this time right now. And one of them is grades 1 through 3, which we call readiness. And here they're learning general music, they're moving, they're dancing. They begin beginning instruments like recorders and different kind of rhythm sticks so that they develop all the knowledge and skill sets that they would need to read music and to play music with others. Then the next group of kids is called concertino, and that is essentially a group of kids about grades 3 to about grade 6. And there they're learning beginning string instruments. So it's beginning instrumental technique, assuming that they have some knowledge of, or some training in musicianship. And it's a place where they're learning beginning string instruments, which are very difficult and take a lot of time to grow on. So in there, they're also doing dulcimers, as well as recorders and some singing and also some basic piano skills. So the idea is that it's a beginning instrumental class at all levels, that all of the skills will help you to be the musician that you want to be when you're ready for the orchestra. And then the last level is the Rock Music Orchestra, which is basically kids grades 4 all the way through 12 who now can read music, play music, and that is violin, viola, cello, and bass. So we are bowed string instruments as a focus.
That's marvelous.
Absolutely. And so we've grown to roughly 60 students that we service in downtown Rochester, and we're housed downtown on North Street. It's called the David F. Gant Community Center. It used to be the old North Street Center, but now it's the David F. Gant Community Center in honor of Assemblyman David F. Gant.
Right.
And we've been in there since January. They've recently remodeled the community center. It's a beautiful space with open windows, wonderful programming in it, new spaces. And one of the things that's also unusual, when they renovated the David F. Gant Center, they brought rock music in, and we were actually able to be in on the design process for the space.
Excellent.
So we have designated a space that is for a music program within a community center. And I would venture to say that nationally, there aren't very many municipally funded community centers that have actually allocated and designated space for a music program. So we have an orchestra in a box, basically, an orchestra in a closet. And we are able to function, keeping all of our instruments, all of our materials necessary for this really expansive program, all at the David F. Gant Center.
And you have the students, and you have the space. And where do you get the instruments?
Wonderful question. Well, when our partner collaborators met to design the pilot program, they knew that funding was going to be an issue. Now, I told you of all those institutions that help start rock music. None of all of the institutions are still in our partnership collaborative, but none of them provide direct resource financial support.
Is that true?
That's right. So none of the organizations provide money for operational costs for rock music, which again, how do you support 60 students doing this?
Big challenge.
What they do provide is a lot of in-kind support, like things like professional development, materials, concert attendance, all these things. And they also provide resource support for a lot of other things. But what we needed to do was find funding for the program. So they wrote several grants, and I have been on that and writing on grants and renewal grants, and we have been proud to say that we have been funded since the beginning from the Max and Marian Farish Foundation. And they granted us in our first year $100,000 to design a pilot program. At that time, we were 40 students, 2 classes. We had to engage 40 kids and their families in music loving, beginning the process. And since then, like I said, we've grown now to 60 students and families. We perform over 10 concerts a year, everything from in-house concerts at the David F. Gant Center to going to the Eastman Theater and performing there before an RPO concert, going to the Hochstein School, various other community centers, anything that we can do. We believe that there is a service that can be done through music learning. You can learn the gift of music for free at our program and then give back through performance as a service to your community.
That is phenomenal.
And I do have to reiterate, I said that, but I didn't mention it. Every student in our program is provided a full scholarship from the very beginning. So there is no cost or fee to apply to our program. Instruments, books, travel expense, food, materials, t-shirt, everything you could think of is completely funded for through this grant. And the reason is that we know we don't want to leave any barriers for anyone to participate in music. Fantastic. And like we said, in a population that classically has been underrepresented and underserved musically, we wanted to leave no barriers at all. And in fact, when we interview families that are interested in rock music, we don't even look at financial records as a platform for deciding. It is a music for all program. The only requirement for eligibility is being a resident of the city of Rochester.
I see.
And that is all. So we have a huge range of salaries that students participate, but it's sort of irrelevant for us. For us, it's about creating a community of music lovers and developing social skills to better what is going on in downtown and urban Rochester.
Now, do you find that students who start with you, say in the early program, stay throughout the levels? And how many do you have completing them at this point? You're in your 3rd year, so some of them could have progressed at this point.
Absolutely. Well, from last year to this year, I can tell you and very proud to say that our retention rate is over 80%.
80%.
Which is a huge percentage, especially when you look at urban programming. It's a wonderful retention rate. Yeah. And for the city of Rochester, RCSD school district, their graduation rate is something around 43% graduating. So almost like 1 in 2 is not graduating. So to think of that number reflecting, you know, the student population at large in RCSD and looking at, well, our kids are 80% or so coming back, we already are seeing the beginning signs of a lot of growth. On top of that, we do have a lot of you know, research done on social growth within our students and their families, musical development. We have several of our students who have now taken it upon themselves to audition for School of the Arts, which is classically known as one of the stronger schools in the district. We have had students that have now started to apply for scholarship programs at Hochstein and at Eastman Community Music School. In fact, we had a student who began his instrumental study at ROC Music 3 years ago, only had lessons at ROC Music, and he got accepted into School of the Arts, but also into a full scholarship program to study at the Eastman Community Music School. So now this student is in 7th grade. He has a full tuition scholarship to study lessons, theory, and history, all at the Eastman School for, for 6 years. And I can tell you that his mother spoke before one of our concerts last year, and she said, I would have never imagined this for my child. It has changed his life. He used to not speak to many people. He used to be so shy that he couldn't talk to individuals. He didn't have a place within school. He went and kind of came back, and since ROC Music, this boy has changed. He has opened up. He is proud of something. He works hard. I don't tell him to practice. I didn't even know he was auditioning at School of the Arts. He did it himself. So, you know, there's a lot of these kinds of metrics that are slowly cropping up from this, but we absolutely see so much social change in our students and in their families. Many of our families had never been to an acoustic concert before. So now what we realize is that programs like this also affect the families of the students that are involved. These people are going to concerts, they're giving back in other ways, they're doing service projects, and they're also more rooted and invested in what their children are doing, which we know will help them in school and later on in life. I think the flip side of all of this too is it's important to mention that these community projects like ROC Music and El Sistema projects, they partner with professional orchestras and universities and things like that. And there's a reason for that. We as a classical musician, as a performing musician myself, feel that in this day and age that we've kind of noticed the trend of, we always have here that, you know, less people are interested in classical music or less people are going to concerts. And, you know, after a lot of reflection, it seems to many of us that there's been a lot of ostracizing of audiences that's been done. You know, this idea that classical musicians perform a concert and it's a commodity. You go pay for a ticket, you go watch it, and then you go home and that's it. And really, if you look back at the beginning kind of evolution of classical music, it was not that. In fact, it was a participation-based activity. There was choral societies in cities and towns. There were orchestral societies in cities and towns. And the idea was that there was professional musicians, yes, but they were also always playing with amateur musicians. That music was a participatory-based you know, thing. And when you look at something like ROC Music in the modern day, we are trying to increase participation in classical music at every level. And an example of this is, yes, our students that we service and also their families, but we're also building audiences for Rochester Philharmonic. We are building audiences for the Eastman School of Music. We are building bridges to Hochstein and to other arts entities. So the idea is that we're really increasing participation at large in classical music and attending concerts and things like that, but also providing a platform for service. RPO musicians are now being involved in community service projects. Eastman faculty and students, college students, now have a platform for giving back or for teaching experiences or for performance opportunities. So really, we see ourselves as the next kind of liaisons or arbiters of music participation in the new world. And as we move into the next generation, we feel that this is a way for the classical music model at large to start to try to do something about the systemic problem that is less people being interested in classical music. We really feel like we're passionate that we're increasing participation at every level for every population and for every arts organization.
Now, if someone has an instrument in their collection that they would like to donate, is this something that you would accept?
Absolutely. So right now we do have a focus on the bowed string instruments, the violin, viola, cello, and bass, and we do have instrument donations available to us. The other thing is we do host several events like benefit recitals and different kinds of instrument drives and fundraisers. If you're interested in that, the best way to do is to get in contact through our website, which is rocmusic.org, rocmusic.org. And that's hosted through the Eastman website, but there you will see how you can support or give back, or if you're interested also in volunteering or perhaps coming in and working with our kids, that's another place where you can get into. So that's rocmusic.org.
Rocmusic.org. And do you have volunteers who work with the students?
Absolutely. So I have a staff of 4 teachers, and then I have myself, program director. And now for volunteers and interns and instructors and that sort of thing, we've actually grown quite a large amount in the last couple of, I mean, like I said, we're in an infant program in our 3rd year, but we have over 4 dedicated intern instructors who are basically learning about the El Sistema philosophy, the community-based model of teaching. And we have done several presentations at area universities and colleges and other types of programs to begin to bring in more volunteers, and we're absolutely interested in that. We have several events through the year that are special events like hosting different concerts or bringing in other artists for our community. So it's not just anybody that has to be a music educator that can volunteer. Really, we have other opportunities for you to get involved if you believe in this social service and using classical music as a tool to affect social change.
And are there paid teachers? You mentioned you have 4 on your staff.
That's right.
Are these professionals?
That's right. So I myself am a graduate from the Eastman School of Music as a performance and a music education major.
I see.
And 3 of my staff also are Eastman School graduates who are functioning working musicians, but they come from all different kinds of backgrounds. I have one who is a teacher in the East Irondequoit School District. I have another who is a doctoral level performer who's from Sweden and who has traveled all around the world to perform, and she's teaching in ROC Music. I have another teacher who has degree work in music education and the fine arts, but he's a rock star. He travels and he's in a band and he goes to New York City and he goes around the country and he does essentially, you know,
working musician.
Working musician. And to us and to me, that's the kind of people that I want to bring into my organization, as long as their heart is in the right place and they believe in music as a tool to affect youth, that they have the right idea and what their skills, what they do with their music. It's actually important to share that with children. I think some people, you know, they sort of think, well, an example I have is someone thinks that, you know, I want to work in a hospital. The only job I can be is a doctor. Well, no, there's probably 100 other types of jobs that are in a hospital, you know? True. And it's true of classical music. If you're going to be a musician, there are so many things you can do with your music or with your art.
Very true.
And I think it's very important to show that to our program and to our youth, that musicians really can be people that give back in so many ways in their communities.
Well, it's wonderful that they get to hear their teachers perform.
Absolutely.
It's like a resident artist. And who are your resident artists?
Yes. So I'm happy to announce this year is our first year that we have a resident artist group, and the group is called Sound Exchange.
Sound Exchange.
And Sound Exchange is a group, the executive director, her name is Emily Wozniak, and she's another Eastman grad. And she developed this group as a platform for classical musicians. And she has a similar mission. She believes that classical music has sort of gotten into a rut of how to present concerts. She thinks it's kind of been basic, and that's how it's been going, and that's how people want it to go. But she really wanted to break from that model. So she created this platform of performing musicians to do a couple of things. They do performances in non-standard venues, very eclectic choices of venues. They do contemporary music, contemporary classical music, but they also infuse that with pop influences, with alternative programming choices of music. And the other thing that they do, I would say, is that they really incorporate technology into their performances to modernize, again, the presentation of classical music for today's audience. And so that group, Sound Exchange, also, interestingly enough, won a large collaborative collision grant from the Farish Foundation, the Max and Marian Farish Foundation. This was about a year ago. And their grant money, they partnered with RIT, as well as Microsoft Studios, to develop concerts and programming around technology-influenced music performances, and they've done these all around the area. Imagine RIT was one of the large events they did. They performed in Fringe Festival. I keep speaking about them as they. I'm actually a violist in Sound Exchange. I'm one of the members now. And so we've performed all over, and we have many plans to continue. And for me, it was such an amazing opportunity for them to ask me to join their group, and then for me to actually provide this residency for ROC Music. So now Sound Exchange will be the first ever resident artist musicians for rock music. And that will look like, of course, coming into our program and working with our youth. But they will be doing that through performance, through some teaching, and we hope to do projects that infuse, again, technology into our music teaching and performance, so that these kids who grow up with iPads and grow up with phones around them and all these things, they can start to really think of how technology and project-based learning can really affect their lives and what they do with it, and hopefully open their eyes and minds to the idea that there is a career in music somewhere, or there is a career in teaching or somewhere.
Right.
And so Sound Exchange will be involved with the whole year. We have plans for some concerts in the spring that are coming up, and those will be on our website at rockmusic.org when they come up. But you can look at Sound Exchange online as well, and you can search soundexchangeproject.org. And you
Very
can check a little bit
interesting.
more
Thanks
about
for
that.
sharing that.
Of course.
Now, one interesting thing is, do music writing skills and music reading skills get taught along? Because, for instance, in the Suzuki program that comes much later, how about the music writing and the music reading?
That is a wonderful question. Absolutely is the answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Being an educator and a performer, I have to sort of have a certain expectation, and that is absolutely my kids are all musically literate and are trained in reading and writing music. And you're very astute in asking about that kind of question of, ear-based learning rather than kind of theoretical or literacy-based learning.
Or just physical mimicry.
That's right. And the reality of it is we do all kinds of it. One of the reasons we do that is because we want our kids to basically feel successful at every level and at every state of the music learning process. So in any given day at Rock Music, you will walk into a classroom and you will see the kids kind of transition between several different exercises that include singing, and then includes improvisation, and then includes call and response kind of learning, and then you'll jump onto another instrument like recorders, which is a little bit more basic, and then we'll do music literacy, actual reading, on the staff, and do work like that. And then the other part of that is we do a lot of learning where we do partner songs. So the students will learn melody chunks or melody components to a song, then another student will learn the bass component, another one will do harmony, so that they create these little duets and trios, and then switch, you change parts. And so the idea is that they're really developing the musical skills, in a holistic kind of fashion. And then you will see another transition that will be, let's move to the string instruments and really look at technique and the executive skills that are required. And we separate all these different activities with the idea that students will get less frustrated. And also we are embedding so many musical skills at every different level that they don't get bored with what they're learning, but at the same time we're subliminally are embedding all these wonderful musical
They learn through their eyes, learn through their hands,
That's
learn
exactly
through their
right.
bodies and their ears at the same time.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that's really the most important things about El Sistema philosophy is that it's ensemble-based learning. So the kids do this in large groups of people. It's not kind of always one-on-one, although there are private lessons and group pull-out lessons. But the idea is that the teachers have to work really hard at creating kind of an easy, a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced part, so that from the very first day a student gets there, they're performing with an ensemble, they're performing with a group. And we know that when you play with somebody else, your own sound gets a little bit better, your own confidence gets better. And when we're trying to affect social change, one of the biggest issues is confidence, self-confidence. So we really look at ensemble-based learning and how kids can learn multiple skills so that they can jump in between activities and take on different roles. And the idea is that, it's kind of like a sports team. We all have to work out. We all have to run. We all have to lift weights. We all have to do free throws or whatever it is. We all have to better all of those skills, even if you're the star player on the team. The idea is the team will get stronger.
Well, it's been delightful to talk to you. Great to meet you, Alexander. Thank you so much for taking the time and to share these ideas, this wonderful program. And tell us again your websites and how to reach you.
Absolutely. Our website is rockmusic.org. That's ROCMUSIC.org. And our organization is called ROC Music, and we're housed at the David F. Gant Center, downtown Rochester. I'm Eric Townell. This has been In the Spotlight. My guest has been Alexander Peña, Program Director and Lead Teacher of the ROC Music Collaborative. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.